Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hussein, and I will be our moderator for today's session. Good afternoon, Christiana Igbe.
Good afternoon.
You're advised to put on our videos during the session and edit your name session on your Zoom app too. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Juliana Ima.
Good afternoon, Hussein. Hi, everyone. Good to see your faces. Good to see you, Christina. Good to see you, Uzamaka. Good to see you, Roots. Good to see you, Adebayo. Good to see you all. You're all welcome to the Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ebenezer. We're happy to see you. Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Ms. Juliana. So our topic for today is medical ethics, regulation, and compliance. As we all know, mentees will be making presentation, and our mentor will also be giving us some comments and contributions on the topic. So quickly about the program, Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program is a quarterly program for students and young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice, training, mentorship, internship, discussion forum, updates, and resource materials from experienced mentors. This program seeks to encourage continuous training, development, and evolution in Nigeria, Africa, and around the world. You can search for Gypsy on your social media platform, #GypsyMIP. The objectives of the program is to provide easy access, guidance, training, and resource materials for students and young professionals to facilitate dialogue and network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, to transform mentees into mentors and leaders of the next generation, and to facilitate further mentorship and internship, scholarship, and job placements for the mentees. So I'll be giving us some announcements for today. The first announcement for today is the Gypsy 20, the first quarter of Gypsy 2023 is the registration for the first quarter, which is next year, is currently ongoing. You can share with your friends and colleagues that are interested to sign up for the program. Any of the courses available is fully online. Artificial intelligence, intellectual property, the energy industry, fintech, patent drafting, and health tech and law. So the second announcement for today is that we'll be having 30 minutes one-on-one session with any of our favorite mentor. This announcement is for the mentees. If you are interested in having a 30 minutes private session with any of our mentor, you can register through the link on your screen, bit.ly/gypsym. Then the final announcement for today is that we are having a get-together party on the 10th and on the 17th of December. On the 10th is in Abuja, and on the 17th is in Lagos. So this is the first get-together party we'll be having for all our Gypsy mentors we'll be having. You can register through the link or scan the barcode on the flyers. The flyers will be shared to your groups as time goes on, so you will be able to register if you are all advised to attend if you have the time. So you can register when the flyer is shared. Your week 8 program, you're advised to start working on your week 8 project, which is the awareness week. That's the final announcements for all our mentees. So today we'll be having Mr. Ebenezer as our mentor. Mr. Ebenezer Ekwatu. Ebenezer is a legal practitioner, consultant, creative writer, entrepreneur, and a passionate patent right and safety advocate. He is the principal partner, Law Front Multidisciplinary Consult, a law firm that provides innovative and cutting-edge legal solutions located in Abuja, FCT, Nigeria. He is also a medical law expert and an executive director of Lawyers Arise for the People Initiative, a patent right and safety advocacy NGO with its office in Abuja, FCT. Ebenezer is an associate member of Medical Law Professional Association of Nigeria, a trained medical care assessor by International Medical Law Center as the legal team leader for the Make Our Hospital Work campaign, a citizen-led community-based advocacy to improve the quality of healthcare service in hospitals and primary healthcare facilities across Nigeria. As a patent right and safety advocate, Ebenezer has featured as guest discussant on different radio and television stations where he sensitized Nigeria on their rights and patents. Ebenezer has over a decade on the field, experience in HIV and AIDS and patent rights advocacy. He works with Center for the Right to Health, a reputable NGO that is committed to health rights advocacy, where he volunteers as program officer, legal human rights program for over a year before he registered to focus on his advice law practice and patent rights and safety advocacy. While at CRH, he, among other things, worked as an associate editor researcher of the book, The Right to Health and Violation of Patent Rights in Nigeria, Dex Review of Health Related Laws in Nigeria, published by CRH in 2016. He is a leadership enthusiast and has attended different leadership trainings with certification. He resides in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Ebenezer.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir. So we will be calling on our mentees to make their 8-minute presentation and share their screen with us. We'll be calling on the first group, which is Group 1. Group 1, the presenter for Group 1, you can unmute yourself, share your screen, and start your presentation. Kindly note that you have only 8 minutes for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My assistant presenter, Rosemary, would be sharing her screen for our group today.
You can start presenting if she is not sharing the screen. She can share the screen while you are presenting.
Okay, our topic for today is medical regulation and compliance. My name is Eyodo Ruth Kletus, and I'm the presenter for Group 1. The outcome of this discourse today is to first of all define our key terms, medical regulation and compliance, and also what we'll be achieving today. We'll be looking at the roles of medical regulatory bodies with their jurisdiction over everything in health. We'll be looking at their regulation and jurisdiction over drugs, equipment, biologicals, and the likes. We'll also be looking at regulatory authorities and medical regulatory laws in the US and in Nigeria. But for the purpose of this discourse, we'll be looking at Nigeria as a case study. We'd also be looking at regulatory laws which all health personnel must adhere to before they own a health facility in Nigeria. The main purpose of this discourse is to protect the patient and the healthcare personnel by ensuring that the devices and procedures used are safe. What then is medical regulation? Medical regulation refers to a body of laws that have been established to ensure that healthcare personnel and bodies comply with public health policies and provide safe care to all users of the system. Medical compliance simply refers to the strict adherence to medical regulations, as have been stated earlier. Medical regulatory laws in Nigeria and in the US. But first of all, we must ascertain what healthcare laws or medical regulatory laws are. They simply refer to laws relating to the manufacturing, registration, development, testing of drugs, food, medical devices, and cosmetics. So the medical regulatory laws in the US, we have quite a number of them, but because of our time, I'll be listing one or two of them. So we have HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. We have HITECH, Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act. Then regulatory laws in Nigeria include quite a number of them also. We have National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control Act, the NAFDAC Act, and we also have the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. The regulatory bodies with jurisdiction in Nigeria, we have the Federal Ministry of Health, we have NAFDAC, we have NDLEA, and so on. The steps to obtain authorization to develop, test, and market a product. In Nigeria, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control is primarily responsible for the production and obtaining authorization to develop and test or market a product relating to healthcare. And no one can commence a clinical trial unless a written authorization has been granted by NAFDAC. A series of accompanying documents is supposed to be included in the presentation or in the authorization of getting authorization for the trial, for the opening of a healthcare center. And we have the marketing of the products, the registration, the advertisement of a product, and other things that have been imputed into our PowerPoint slides. And lastly, we have the penalties by NAFDAC for non-compliance. Section 25 of the NAFDAC Act provides for penalties for non-compliance with the provisions of the stated act. And lastly, we have roles of medical regulatory agencies. They are to advise governments on private-public partnership in healthcare, and they also help in shaping policies and other related matters, and they are cost-effective. That will be all for our presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth Ayo. That was a short and very informative presentation. Thank you very much. So we'll call our second presenter for today, Group 2 presenter.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yes, my name is Nanchang Nangwang, and I am the presenter for Group 2. The topic we are going to be considering today is medical regulation, ethics, and compliance.
Sorry, please can you log out on your second device, please? Kindly log out on your second device, or you can reduce the volume on your second device. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We're looking at medical regulation, ethics, and compliance, and we understand that the world is changing. Is changing. So is medical practice, and for that purpose, please can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
us.
Okay. Now, medical regulation has to do with the either body of laws that are set in place for the purpose of providing guidance or regulation for all who are involved in medical provision of medical services. Then medical ethics has to do with maybe body of rules, regulations, or moral right and wrong, things that actually regulate those who practice or render those services, and then compliance in the event of failure of a practitioner to comply with or to do what is expected of him, and what will be the repercussion. Now, ethics, as I have defined, is a combination of standards of behavior, principles of right and wrongs, and it has to do with the healthcare providers. And then we have the medical ethics that strictly applies to those providing health services. Now, these laws ranges from this medical ethics applies to everyone who is a medical practitioner or provides health services from the federal, state, or the local government. And we have bodies who are saddled with the responsibilities for the regulation of this healthcare, one of which is the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, has to do with that regulates the medical and dental and doctors and dentists. We also have the Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria. They actually regulate pharmacies, those that deal with drugs. We have also the Nurses and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. They deal with different kinds of nurses and midwives that collect births. We have quite a number of them, but for the purpose of this, we are just concentrating on these basic three, because we have doctors and nurses and midwife, and then we have pharmacists. So these bodies I've mentioned are actually saddled with the responsibility of setting standards, putting in qualification and admitting those who are qualified to practice as health care providers in Nigeria, including the establishment of either their hospitals or places where they sell drugs or administer these services. Now, the responsibilities of those regulatory bodies are those who have mentioned, are those I mentioned. And so now, majorly, when we talk about ethics in this healthcare, we are actually concentrating basic principles of non-malfeasance, beneficence, utility, distributive justice, and then autonomy. Simply means that in a healthcare provider, while providing his services, should not in any way cause harm services to, although there are certain exceptions. Then beneficence has to do with the person who is being provided these services. It should actually be to his benefit, simply put. Then the means that those provided when providing these services should actually treat everyone equally. And then if a person is used as someone who maybe is used for the purpose you make sure that that person also benefit from the outcome of this research. So if research as well as benefit from the outcome of that research. Then it's important ethical consideration in healthcare provision, in the sense that those patients patients who are being treated should actually be given the authority to do with their body in terms of treatment. And unlike before, where doctors actually decide what they feel is right or wrong for the patient, this time around you explain to the patient to his understanding in the language that he understands, in order to these are the basic considerations in healthcare provisions. So it is especially providing these health services should be able to be a professional, be equipped, he should have understanding of what he's doing, and if that ethics are actually liable to be punished, and those regulators are saddled with the responsibility of punishing. They can suspend either 6 months, and on the other hand, you have those that their names can be removed from the role, as in they are not. And then several other measures that are put in place to ensure that every health provider does what is expected of him. So those regulatory bodies apply, and then there is a place of professional development. Is health providers go for professional development. It is only the regulatory to determine and then make sanction to with those regulations. So this is what our group have in respect to.
Okay, thank you very much, Nanchang. Your presentation was very educative and enlightening. We'll move to our mentor for today, Mr. Ebenezer. Call on him to give us contributions, give us some advice, and any recommendation.
Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes, good afternoon once again. Julie, I must commend you for putting this together. I'm elated to see, let me call you all, that's the presenters, young generation of few health law advocates and proponents and practitioners in Nigeria. Honestly, I'm impressed to know that this number of people could bring out this depth of research. Let me ask, are you all law students? Please, you can unmute your mic so that we engage. Are you all law students?
No, sir.
No, you are not. But you showed interest. Firstly, I want to commend you all, whether you're a law student or not, for showing interest. I believe you have learned one or two things in the course of your research. Now, to your presentations. I went through the presentations. Fortunate that the first group that talked about medical regulation and compliance, they did not, why did you people not exhaust the content of your, is it because of time? It appears you abridged your presentation from what you sent in.
Ruth, I think the presenter was Ruth.
Yes. Your presentation was abridged. You did not run through the contents of all you sent in. But however, let me make my observation. Your topic is medical regulation and compliance, but it appears you focused more on NAFDAC. Your presentation was all around NAFDAC and what they do, delving up to cosmetics. And I think it's off the mark, but you people tried by bringing this up. Now, when we talk about medical regulation, that's the topic, medical regulation and compliance. We are regulating medical practice in Nigeria. So what laws should we be looking at? We'll be looking at the Establishment Act. None of the two groups mentioned Medical and Dental Practitioners Act. None of the two groups, even when these people were talking about ethics. But if you talk about regulation, we start from the foundation, which is the law that establishes the practice of medicine in Nigeria. The Medical and Dental Practitioners Act is there. Then for other, how do I call them now? Other related professionals, there is this notion, each time you mention medical practice, what comes to mind readily? Doctors, followed by nurses. Then the other associated professionals in healthcare provision or service delivery are more or less relegated to the background. The pharmacists are barely mentioned, even though they are important. The laboratory scientists are rarely mentioned, even though they are important. Then you talk about, I've talked about pharmacists, I've talked about lab scientists, even physiotherapists. These are disciplines within the medicine. So anytime you talk about regulation, medical regulation, you must look at each of these other associated professionals. Because when we talk medical regulation, you talk about medical practitioners, Medical and Dental Council Practitioners Act, you talk about Nursing and Midwifery Registration Act. Then the Pharmaceutical Council, the Pharmacy Act is there. We also have for the medical laboratory scientists. We also have Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria Act, establishing for lab scientists. Now, these are the principal regulatory acts. Then you now talk about, for example, for doctors, you now have Medical and Dental Council, which regulates doctors and their practice. For nurses, you now have the Midwifery Council, Nursing and Council of Nigeria, which regulates. For Medical and Dental Council, they determine the knowledge, they set up the curriculum, the knowledge to be acquired by prospective doctors who are medical students and in training. They set up the knowledge to be acquired, meaning they develop curriculum. They also regulate practice of medicine by ensuring, one, that members of practitioner discipline and stick to the ethics of the profession. So to do that, they now have the Medical and Dental Disciplinary Tribunal. In fact, before you get to the tribunal, you have the Medical and Dental Investigating Panel. So if there is a medical error or medical negligence by a doctor, the victim is supposed to report to Medical and Dental Council. Then it is now Medical and Dental, when they look at the case and they feel, okay, there is merit in this, they forward it to the Medical and Dental Investigating Panel. If the investigating panel does their investigation and they feel, yes, the doctor in question needs to answer some query, they now forward it to the tribunal. And doctors have been opportune to attend the sessions of Medical and Dental Council Tribunal. And I must assure you that it is not funny. You see doctors sweating in air-conditioned rooms. Why? Because you run the risk of losing your license. I think early this year or late last year, a doctor in Benin, his license was revoked. It could be as severe as that. You have suspension, you can be cautioned, you can be suspended from practice for 6 months. And in serious cases, even though none is less serious, in severe cases, the doctor practice license to be revoked. It is also the Medical and Dental Council that even issues practice license to start with. Now, for doctors beyond medical and dental, now have the Code of Ethics, Code of Medical Ethics in Nigeria, which serves as, I will use the word constitution, the bylaw of all doctors or dental practitioners. So it is now the Code of Medical Ethics that spells out how to carry on in your practice as a doctor. So it is an infraction of the provisions of the Code of Ethics that makes you, how do I put it, that becomes the cause of action for petition against you. So the Code of Medical Ethics actually regulates the practice of medicine when it comes to the personal doctor. Now, you must also understand that Medical and Dental Council only regulates doctors, not hospitals. Doctors, individual doctors. Then for nurses, we have the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. Then for pharmacists, you have the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, and you replicate it like that. They also have their own code of professional conduct for nurses. There is code of professional conduct for laboratory scientists. There is a code of professional conduct for pharmacists. And they have the same. If there is an infraction by a practitioner, they also have their own disciplinary equivalent that will discipline the practitioner. Then when you talk about hospital establishment, it is a different thing altogether. From your excuse me, because I had to print it out. From your presentation you sent in, you listed a few requirements. Now, for state governments, the state has hospital management boards, which supervises or oversees the management of general hospitals. Hospital Management Board supervises general hospitals, but for private establishment of hospitals, there are procedures, part of which you listed in your document. Then for the second group, ethics, medical ethics. When I saw the topic, I smiled. This one is where I sleep, where I breathe, where I eat, where I do my, this is my field, medical ethics. You people did a wonderful job, but I have some things against you. What I have against you is that there are areas you just were showing us pictures without speaking to those pictures. Now, if someone reads it, or you sent this your PowerPoint presentation to some, the person cannot deduce anything from the picture. Say general principles of the ethics of medical and dental practices in Nigeria include. The next thing we started seeing is pictures. So how do we interpret the pictures? Presenter, is there any reason for that? Hello, the
Chang,
presenter for group 2 or any of their
Mr.
member can
Nanchang, you
answer.
can answer.
Well, no, I just feel that maybe, hello?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, if there was enough time, we would have spoken to the pictures, but because it's just 8 minutes, and then the
Okay.
thought of that alone is it can be so destabilizing. So we have to
Okay,
just,
you are the presenter, right?
yes, very well.
Okay, what did you say is the principle of beneficence?
I said beneficence.
Yes.
The person, for example, who well, anything that a medical practitioner is doing should be for the benefit of the patient, basically. So and then
As an example you gave, that's what I'm interested in. No,
yes,
beneficence first.
yes, beneficent. It should be for the
There was an
interest
example
of,
you used. Yes,
yeah,
now let me correct.
yes, okay,
Like you said, the principle of beneficence generally is to promote less harm, no harm. The principle of beneficence simply means do no harm. Now, it is, if you look at it, you will say, is that not malfeasance he's talking about? Do you understand? Malfeasance, not malfeasance, do no harm. Now, benefit promote the utmost good of the patient. Decisions that should be taken should be to benefit the patient, should be in the interest of the patient. The point I'm trying, the mistake or misconception I'm trying to correct is where you said, for example, if someone is used for research, the person has to benefit from it. I don't know if you remember saying something like that.
yes, I was giving an example.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
now that is a wrong notion. I assumed you took that literally from the name, the principle, beneficence. You did well in autonomy. For autonomy, the patient owns his body. The patient is the master of his body. Part of the rights of a patient is the right to refuse treatment. So if you are talking about autonomy here, you cannot attend or treat or administer treatment to a patient without the patient's informed consent. Not just the patient's consent, but the patient's informed consent. Why would you talk about the patient's informed consent? Because the patient has the right to information. When I was going through your material, I saw where you wrote about data of the patient and information of the patient, privacy of the patient. You were already talking about patient's rights. You were already talking about the rights of the patient. So the principle of autonomy requires that the patient is informed. Now, under rights to information, the patient needs to know the nature of the ailments that brought him to the hospital. He has the right to know the treatment options available. He has the right to know the cost implication of those treatments. So, as a healthcare provider, you do not foist a treatment on the patient because the patient has a right to refuse that treatment. Now, for you to commence after you have explained all this to the patient and the patient says, yes, you may commence your treatment, you are respecting the patient's rights to autonomy. But where the patient, for whatever reason, says no, no matter how much you love the patient, if you go ahead to treat against the will of the patient, you are violating this principle of autonomy, and the patient can sue you for that. For example, there is this religious sect, the Jehovah's Witness. they subscribe to blood transfusion. They don't take it, they don't donate blood. They believe that the blood is so sacred and should not be tampered with, even when you are saving life with it. So if a Jehovah's Witness is in critical need of blood, no matter what you preach, that person will not agree to take that blood. Now, if you go ahead and infuse that patient, you will be violating the principle and the patient can sue you. Now, for ethics generally, what regulates ethics are the code of professional conduct of the different disciplines. For doctors, code of medical ethics. For nurses, code of conduct for nurses. For pharmacists, the same. For lab scientists, the same. When we talk about ethics here, is basically the code of conduct of the different disciplines. Then any infraction can lead to a lawsuit. Then at the national level, we now have the National Health Act 2014, which provides for the rights of patients generally. After the National Health Act in 2014, the government now identified within the National Health Act some basic rights, which they put together and called it Patients' Bill of Rights 2018. There are about 12 rights of the patients in that document, but it is not a law. It is more like a policy framework. Then you now have the compulsory treatment and care of gun wound victims. Now, these are specialized patients. So these documents I'm mentioning are documents from which you can pick patients' rights that guarantee rights of patients, which if any of these rights is breached, it amounts to unethical practice, because we are talking about medical ethics here. Then you have the HIV/AIDS Anti-Discrimination Act of 2014 to protect the rights of persons living with HIV/AIDS. Then just this year, Lagos State has its equivalent for the HIV/AIDS Anti-Discrimination Act. This year, like last week or 2 weeks ago, the Rivers State government signed into law their own equivalent of compulsory treatment and care of gun wound victims. Number 3 of Rivers State 2022. That was just 2 weeks ago that the governor signed it into law. So when we talk about medical ethics, you talked about the Helsinki Declaration. The foundation, apart from the establishing law, the foundation of medical ethics is the Hippocratic Oath. The foundation of medical ethics is the Hippocratic Oath, part of which states that the healthcare provider will not use his knowledge of medicine against humanity or something like that. That he will value human life and will not abuse such even under duress. I'm paraphrasing. So you talk about the Hippocratic Oath, you talk even the 1999 Constitution. When we talk about regulation, ethics now, we have rights to life. So if a healthcare provider unjustly, due to medical malpractice, which is a criminal offense, medical malpractice is a criminal offense. It is different from medical error. Medical error, you intended good, but there was a mistake along the line. But medical malpractice is outright criminal activity. Someone comes for surgery, for appendicitis, without knowing you harvest, teach it back, and the person is a different thing altogether. Okay, justice, you mentioned distributive justice. Can you enlighten me on distributive justice? because it is not enough to state principles. What is distributive justice? Hello, Mr. Presenter.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Nanchang, you can.
Any member of the
Okay.
group, not necessarily the presenter, any member of the group that understands can contribute.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, so the group 2 members are Tolulope Adebayo, Hassan, Nanchang, Oyin, Ku, and Ruby. And I believe that they are on this call. So any of you can unmute yourself and explain. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yeah, so I think distributive justice will be like maybe when patients have like the same type of illness, or should I say just equal treatment, no favoritism,
Awesome,
no
awesome,
partiality.
awesome. You do not say this man is the son of a rich man, and you use the available, let's assume there is only one available medication. You do not say this is the son of a rich man, he must not die. You use the only available medication to attend to him, even when he has a far lesser condition than the son of a poor man who has a more life-threatening condition that the same medication can attend to. Don't know if you understand it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Then we talk about penalties in case of breach. Interesting. Penalties in case of breach. Number one is that the Medical and Dental Council punishes defaulters or offenders. However, the only way they can punish is when there is reports, where there is a report. So we'll talk about report mechanisms now or redress mechanisms. For medical doctors, if anything goes wrong, you can petition to Medical and Dental Council. But in doing that, you bring your petition in the format of an affidavit. You don't just write a letter along and say, no, you go to court, swear affidavit of facts. What happened? I was admitted at so hospital. I did this. It comes in form of an affidavit, an oath. Then you file it at the Medical and Dental Council's office. Now, before you even get here, there are different varying degrees of, I wouldn't call it offenses, or varying degrees of defaults in ethical practice. What has to do with the patient directly, and it is not grievous to his person. There is no bodily harm, maybe foul language, maybe minor fights for whatever reason, which is out of it. And the healthcare provider says, I am sorry. It can end there. But if you feel aggrieved, you can start with what we call administrative redress by reporting that healthcare provider to the facility, the health facility he works with. The hospital, look for the CMD of the hospital, talk to the CMD. But if it is what that is beyond that, you can now take it to the professional body, which we call professional redress. You talk to you report to Medical and Dental Council or their equivalent in the sister bodies. Then at the Medical and Dental Council, this is professional treatment, professional discipline. It has nothing to do with the legal, which is the last one. We also have the legal redress. You can go to court and get justice. Now, for legal redress, there is the civil litigation aspect, and there is a criminal litigation aspect of it. For civil litigation, if maybe a wrong injection was administered medical, and it leads to paralysis. Maybe a child was given a wrong injection, maybe a wrong dose, maybe expired drugs, whatever reason, and it led to that child being paralyzed. You can sue and recover and claim damages in courts, under courts. The courts will assuage you, no matter what the court gives, it will not bring back the paralyzed leg of the child. The parents of the child will feel a sense of justice by the court awarding damages against the hospital. And that damage will also serve as a deterrent for other practitioners so that they could be more careful when attending to patients. Now, there is also the criminal aspect of it. For example, where there is medical malpractice that leads to death. There's a case that was reported to me in 2017. No, 2014. 2013, 2014. A lady went for surgery somewhere. I won't mention the state, but northern states, and she didn't know. They removed her womb. She didn't know. Was removed. Then, upon suturing her, they ruptured her bladder, leading to incontinence. You are opening your mouth. If I tell you the cases we hear, you won't. Now, leading to incontinence. That was what now raised the alarm, because her bladder has been ruptured. She cannot control urine. She was just passing urine uncontrollably. And they went to hospital to find out. It was in the course of opening up again that they now realized that there is no womb. And then I asked, Madam, did you do surgery? What happened to your womb? Why was your womb removed? And she said her womb was never removed. She wasn't aware her womb was removed. And the matter came up. Unfortunately, I were involved were illiterates. The hospital, it wasn't my direct brief. A judge called me and said, Benisa, you might be interested in this case, gave the number for me to even call. And I called due to language barrier. They are Hausas. I do not understand Hausa language. And eventually they got a lawyer. They got a lawyer to speak with me. And the lawyer, to my surprise, was that I was asking questions about the case. Say, who are you? How did you get to know about this case? I said, someone gave me the number to call and intervene and see what we can do to get justice for these people. Say, well, if anything I want to do in respect of the case, I have to come to their states to render whatever assistance I need to render, to even get as little as facts of what happened. Actually, the woman passed on, and I got to understand that the hospital only gave them 200,000 naira. And that was how that case ended. There is a case of a lady in another state who went for breast examination and all that, and they told her she has breast cancer. And they chopped off her breast, one of her breasts. That was 20. You are laughing. That was 2018. And there's a test she was supposed to run, which she actually did the test. But the hospital now refused to give her results, because that test was supposed to determine the line of treatment, the drugs to be administered to continue the treatment. Now, she was being treated at National Hospital, but the surgery took place in a different state, a teaching hospital. I won't mention the states again. And before you know it, the hospital refused to release her results. Then 2019, 2020, another organization directed her to her own NGO. The organization that was funding her cancer treatment, in quotes, because she's believed to be a cancer patient. Then forwarded her case to us, and we wrote demanding for a release of her results, test results, COVID, that as we kept demanding for the results, the hospital now came out to say, sorry, you actually do not have cancer. It was a mistake. So what should she do in such circumstance? As we speak, she is in court with the hospital. So the matter has gone to court, and we believe she will get justice. So that's part of the penalties in case of breach. Now, let me delve into why there are a lot of cases of medical negligence in Nigeria. Let me say that patients' rights, or medical law generally, is relatively new in our climate. How many of you have heard of World Patient Safety Day? So please, you can turn on your mics.
Please,
hello.
mentors, the mentees for group
Let's
1 and 2.
engage. Let's engage.
Turn on your mic.
I've not.
I haven't heard of it.
Yes, everybody who has heard about World Patient Safety Day, why? Anybody can contribute.
I haven't heard of it
Nobody?
before.
Okay. Now, World Patient Safety Day was established by World Health Organization in 2019. Why did they do that? Because patient harm has become a global concern. So in 2019, the World Health Assembly met and designated 17th September of every year as World Patient Safety Day, a day to create awareness on patient safety. So in 2020, we had World Patient Safety Day, 2021, and this year as well, just I think 2-3 weeks ago, we celebrated World Patient Safety Day 2022. And this year's theme was safe medication safety this year. Now, why did the World Health Organization set out a day to promote patient safety? It is because medical malpractice or medical error is not limited to Nigeria. Please don't think that, okay, our hospitals are bad, our doctors, they don't know what to do. Every other place, it is functioning well. In America, no. In UK, no. No, it's not like that. They also have their issues of medical negligence and malpractice. In China, what they are facing in China, seriously, is cases of organ theft, organ harvest. If you just visit hospital and you are not aware, or you are not alert rather, your kidney could be stolen. Yes, it's a serious issue in China. Yes, it is. So I don't want you to think that Nigeria is well. We are coming up. It is relatively new here. That's the point I was trying to make. So there is need for massive awareness and sensitization. And that's why I said I was happy to see that young people like you could be interested in this field. So I encourage every one of you who want to take it to another level to develop interest. We need more hands. We need volunteers. We need collaboration. We need more people to advocate for this, because you do not know who could be the next victim. The National Health Act you see today that was passed in 2014, it took 10 years of consistent advocacy to get that document to be passed as law. The rich people, they have what it takes to jet out and disappear to UK, to US, to India, to best hospitals of the world and get treatment because they have the money. Now you are here, you are not that privileged or that rich. So I am putting a duty on all of you who participated in this program to go and study the Patient's Bill of Rights. Basically, to know your rights as a patient, starting with you yourself, beyond making this presentation and gaining knowledge. Go and study the Patient's Bill of Rights. There are about 12 rights there. Know it. Anybody that's around you, begin to talk about it. Begin to talk about it. That is the only way that we can talk about regulation properly. Why did I say so? If you do not know your rights, you won't know when that right will have been trampled upon. You won't know when to report. There will be no way the regulatory bodies can have first-hand information to prosecute. Now, if you talk about regulation generally, one of the questions that was sent in is how are they regulated? Now, they have committees. I'm aware that the Medical and Dental Council, they have committees that even go as far as checking quacks. About 3-4 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly when, but I have the news item. A hospital was busted somewhere in Cross River State. A team of persons who were parading themselves as doctors, I think they are 6 in number, and they had 10 patients. Out of the 10 patients, they have carried surgery on, they have carried out 11 surgeries on the 10 patients. One of the 10 patients underwent surgery for appendicitis and hernia. Unfortunately, when they were examined, all of them, there was actually no surgery. Why? Because the quack doctors just opened them up and give them the impression that they have carried out an operation on them and stitch the place up and collect their money. So the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, they are doing their own by regulating to see fake medicine production in collaboration with NAFDAC. They are also checking fake pharmacists and all these patent medicine stores who sell fake drugs, who sell prescription drugs that are not supposed to be over the counter, those who contravene such laws. So the pharmacists, they have their committees who go about checking. The same thing with Medical and Dental Council, they have their own. The same thing with Nursing and Midwifery Council, who check fake nurses. They have their committee, but they won't put it in public. So it is when they bust a place and maybe impound their equipment, then you will see it in the news. But there is regulation. There also, even the Ministry of Health is also doing their own regulation. But the regulation will be more effective with collaboration of the communities. That is where National Orientation Agency comes in. Sensitization of the people, sensitization of the masses, because the regulatory bodies are not spirits. They work with information. Here in Abuja, there was a time a lady who was parading herself as a medical doctor, as a military person, and was running a mini hospital somewhere inside Buhari. They were calling her doctor. And the environment, they were calling her doctor. She's neither a doctor nor a military personnel. But with information, she was arrested and dealt with by the law. So for there to be proper regulation, there is need for information dissemination. And which agency of government is in charge of giving us that orientation of what we should do, the National Orientation Agency is there. So if the government pumps money there and saddle them with the responsibility of sensitizing Nigerians on this, particularly the rights of patients, so that when a patient goes to hospital and his or her right is violated, presently that patient will begin to suspect that this person doing this will most probably not be a professional. So if there are questions, you had a list of questions sent in. If there are questions apart from those ones, we can also take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Trying
sir.
to open my system to get your questions so that I can attend to them one by one.
Thank you very much, sir. I will read the questions in the course of the program. So now we are all advised to put up our videos for the picture time. You take a screenshot of the class, you post on your social media, write a thing or two that you've learned today, tag our mentor and tag Gypsy. Please, we advise everybody to put on their videos. You cannot put up a smile, please. Life is not that serious. You can just smile. I know we are already afraid from the examples our mentor gave today about those that faced wrong medical. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. So moving to the question and answer session now. You can put up your question aside the question, ask the mentor any direct question. You can put on your hand, raise your hand, and I'll call you to ask your question.
Okay, so I can see that Kristen has her hand up. Christina. Yes, so you can unmute yourself and ask your question, Christina.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebenezer, for the insightful teaching. My question is, okay, I need a clarity on the difference between ethics and regulations.
Okay. The difference between ethics and regulations.
Yes, sir.
Now, ethics regulation is put up by the government. Ethics is put up by the professional body. That's the clearest example. Now, let me break it down. Regulation is put up by the government. For example, the Medical and Dental Practitioners Act is a law that regulates medical practice in Nigeria by the federal government, by the National Assembly, a law made by the National Assembly. Ethics is guiding principles of practice put together by the professional body, code of conduct. Maybe let's say code of conduct for nurses is nursing ethics. Then you have medical code of medical ethics for healthcare providers, for medical doctors. I don't know if it is clear. Let me leave medicine and come to law. We have the Legal Practitioners Act, a law enacted by the federal government through the National Assembly that regulates the practice of law in Nigeria. You now have rules of professional conduct by lawyers, by Nigerian Bar Association, which is the ethical principles that lawyers are to carry out their practice with. So regulations, mostly from the government, ethics from the professional body. Is that clear enough?
Okay, thank you very much, sir. That's clear enough.
You're welcome.
Okay, I can also see that someone had his hand up. I think it's Jonah, right? Joanna, sorry. Joanna, please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you, sir, for this session. My question is, you talked about the license issue and you mentioned something like even up to therapists. Does it mean it is only those that have medical license that have probably studied medicine that can go into the line of being a therapist? I mean, there are mental health therapists, there are counselors that are also therapists in their fields. So are you saying these people don't actually have license?
When I said therapy, no, let me streamline it. Physiotherapists. Physiotherapy is a branch of medicine. Do you understand? So yes. There are people who are trained in that field and they have their association in Nigeria. Then you have anesthetists, people who administer anesthetics during surgery. They have their union, they have their umbrella body in Nigeria, and they have their code of ethics. They are not medical doctors. You have the lab scientists. They are not medical doctors, but they work in the healthcare provision environment. You need them. Unfortunately, for the average Nigerian that visits hospital, everybody in white coats is a doctor.
Yes, sir.
Everybody wearing white lab coats is a doctor. So there is an ongoing interdisciplinary rivalry between doctors and other healthcare practitioners. If you understand, doctors are saying we have the upper hands. The anesthetists will say, okay, you come and do surgery without us coming to anesthetize the patient. We are also very, very relevant. The lab scientist says, how would we even know the ailments to treat if you do not consult me? I carry out the laboratory test. If I give you wrong results, you will administer wrong treatment. I am also a stakeholder. So that's why we refer to them more as healthcare providers or healthcare practitioners, instead of singling them out as doctors. Because if you say doctor, you are referring to a trained dental surgeon. That's who a doctor is. Then if you now begin to talk about breaking down their branches to maybe cardiology and all about, broadly they are categorized as medical or dental practitioner. That's the umbrella name for doctors. If you are not a medical or dental, you now have maybe ophthalmology or optometry now. The optometrist is different from the ophthalmologist. They are quarreling, they are quarreling. This one says, well, you can only sell eyeglasses. You cannot touch the eye. You can't treat. Yours is just to issue a glass. This one says, I can examine the eye. I can do so. You see those interdisciplinary or interdisciplinary rivalry. We don't want to go into it. So that's why we just said broadly, doctors, nurses, pharmacy, and all that. Don't know if it makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think Hassan Ebode is raising his hand, so you can ask a question too. Or mute yourself and ask a question. Hassan Ebode. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Hassan. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good
Thanks for
Good
the
evening.
wonderful.
Good evening.
Yes, I thank for the wonderful and insightful lecture. So my question is, can a hospital be held liable? I mean, for the action of a doctor or physician who is not on duty. So is it possible for the hospital to be held liable, or that person, or that doctor will be personally liable?
Okay, you may have to give example here. If you say a physician is not on duty, meaning the physician was not supposed to be at the hospital premises or at his workplace because he's not on duty. So I think maybe you can concretize it by giving a specific example. Hello, Mr. Hassan.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you give us an example to understand your question?
Okay, sir. Let's see for
because a
instance
question
now.
as it is vague and generalized.
Okay, let's assume for instance, sir, a doctor.
Okay.
He has already left the hospital premises.
Okay.
So now he forgot something at the hospital, which he decided to retrieve.
Come back to take. Okay.
So and at that very time, sir, maybe a patient was admitted in that hospital for surgery, maybe emergency. So then he now independently decided to take over, even though he wasn't on duty. So that's the example of the question I asked, sir.
Okay, yes. A doctor
so now,
can be
can
held
the hospital
liable
be liable for any action of that very?
Exactly. The patient was first and foremost admitted to the hospital. So if you are suing, your parties, number one is the hospital, then followed by the doctor. Now, one of the provisions in Code of Medical Ethics is this: if a doctor is passing on the road, the doctor is not obligated to treat you. Maybe a doctor is in a vehicle and there's an accident and someone gets injured, or even is not even in the vehicle, there's an accident and the doctor is passing. If he passes by and does nothing, nobody will hold him liable. If he does first aid just to maybe reduce blood flow and save life for them to get to the nearby or nearest hospital, nobody will hold him liable. But if he comes and presents, yes, I'm a doctor, and he begins to treat, the law requires that he, in the course of treating, he should display reasonable care and skill of a doctor of his standing. Let's assume that that doctor is a consultant. Once he takes up treatment as a doctor, he's expected to treat that patient the way a consultant should treat the patient. He's expected to treat that patient with the experience of a consultant. Whether the patient is paying or not is immaterial. So if the doctor now says, no, I was just helping, he wasn't even paying me, the law will not hear that because you have represented yourself as a doctor. In this instance you gave, the doctor is not on duty. Maybe he was on morning duty, had gone home, remembered he left his laptop in his office and rushes back to pick it, and there's an emergency. Because he's not on duty, he is not obligated to attend to that case. But where he now volunteers to attend to the case, he is supposed to give reasonable care and skill of a doctor of his standing. Anything below that, he has fallen into medical negligence, and he'll be liable for anything that comes out of it.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think Nanchang also raised his hand. You can ask your question, Mr. Nanchang.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ebenezer, for this insightful session. My first question is, one, what does it take, or what makes me a medical law expert or a medical expert? Number two.
No, let's start from one.
Okay.
There's a difference between a medical law expert and a medical expert. A medical expert is a trained person who has gone through medical school, written all the exams, passed well, and was issued a certificate for passing the school, and also a license to practice medicine by Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. That person is a medical expert. Now, for me, I am a lawyer. I decided to develop interest in medical law. Medical law is a branch of law. We have different areas of law. The way you have criminal law, the way you have civil, the way you have commercial law, the way you have law of thoughts, the way you have maritime law. And Juliana, your leader, is an expert in intellectual property law. That's her field. She has decided to develop herself in this area as an expert. The same way I decided to develop myself in medical law as an expert. So I don't know if you get the difference. Now, for you to now become a medical law expert as a lawyer, you must have gone to law school and be called to the Nigerian bar. Then you begin to take up courses, specialized courses in medical law. Begin to attend trainings, begin to read up materials in medical law so that you'll be up to date with whatever is happening in that field of practice. That is what makes you a medical law expert. Then, if there are organizations, both local and international, you begin to affiliate and join to also build your capacity to know what is happening around. That's what makes you an expert. It's the same thing with medical practice. The person we call a consultant is just an ordinary lawyer, an ordinary doctor that has decided to specialize in an area of medicine. Maybe a cardiologist has said, what I want to do throughout my life is study the human heart, see everything that concerns the human heart, just know it, how to study the diseases of the human heart, provide cure, medication for diseases of the heart. And we call him cardiologist. He begins to write different levels of examination, attend courses internationally, until he might spend 4, 5, 6, 10 years studying to qualify as a consultant. In fact, you can't even become a consultant, or at least you would have given from 7, 10 years upwards to start with, of consistent study in that field. So to become an expert in any field is simply to continue to pour yourself in that field. Just immerse yourself in that field of study. You become an expert, not just medical law, in anything in life. You see footballers, they are professionals. In the morning when the banker is going to his bank for work, the footballer is heading to the pitch with his ball for training. That's what makes him an expert. He's a professional.
Okay. So it means that, can we say that, for example, let's say someone who studies anatomy, or
Yes.
someone who studies agriculture, are you saying that that person can actually become a medical, is it, how do I put it, aside from medical, or is there anything like healthcare expert as in this thing?
Yes, there is. Okay, let me say something. We have health law different from medical law and ethics as a course, as a field of study. And it's important that I draw a distinction. When you talk about health law, you are talking about policy development. You are talking about public health. Do you understand? When you talk about medical law and ethics, you are talking about patients' rights, what we did now. I am not a health law expert, but I have knowledge of health law. But I'm a medical law expert. Now, health law deals more with policy, with regulation, with public health, and policy framework generally. But when you talk about medical law and ethics, you are talking about patients' rights, you are talking about patient safety, you are talking about professionalism in medical profession, treatment of patients, and all that. You see the distinction now? This is the broadest distinction I can give. So as you now go into it, even in intellectual property, let me use Julie again. Somebody is an intellectual property law expert. Somebody might decide to focus on copyright. Copyright is an intellectual property, an area of intellectual property. But the person may decide not to do anything with trademark. Another person may be a trademark expert. He's still within intellectual property law practice and decide not to be interested in copyright. Another person may decide to be a patent expert. So it's just all about interest. But if I understood your question, you are saying, can maybe, let's say, a teacher become a medical law expert? Can a farmer? Now, when I say farmer, I'm not talking about our parents in the village, no. I'm talking about someone who went to university, studied agriculture, right?
Yeah.
And can he become a medical law expert?
Yes,
I would say yes. I will say yes and no. Yes, he will become a medical law expert the moment he begins to study materials of medical law, begins to acquire relevant certification in that area, develop sufficient interest. But before you become a medical law, he has to go and study law first, because that's the foundation. It is on that foundation that he can now decide. But if he decides on his own, I love this thing, and begins to consume knowledge in that area, he can have sufficient knowledge in medical law, but he cannot call himself a medical law expert, because he has not been subjected to tests. He has not been certified. I am a trained medical care assessor. I did that training with International Medical Law Center, St. Kitts, South America. I paid for it. I did training. I sat for exam. They marked my papers. They say, Ebenezer, you have passed. This is your certificate. I can call myself today a medical care assessor. We all have elementary knowledge in farming. You can't call yourself a farmer. You may know how to drive. That doesn't make you a driver because that's not your job. The fact that you can drive a car does not make you a driver. There are people who go to school, not just driving school. You see those people who drive your governor and presidents. They have trainings, they have certifications they go through. They have special trainings to do their defensive driving, to even use the car as a weapon. So if someone is applying to drive a governor, the person will state in his CV the trainings he has attended and the certification. So what makes one an expert is that certification. Let me share a personal example. I learned sign language, communicating with the deaf. I learned it in my church voluntarily. We had deaf members, and a sister graciously taught us so that they won't be lost in service. And I was doing it then many years ago. If the pastor is preaching, I will be interpreting. Because they will put you, the way they put us, one person that hears, a deaf person, someone who hears, a deaf person. That's how we sit in church. We have where we sit. As the choir is singing, you are interpreting. So I thought I was an expert. Until 2007, there was a conference, a CASA on HIV in Abuja, 2728. I attended the conference and I felt a burden to go and do HIV/AIDS advocacy to the deaf community. And in my ignorance or in my naivety, I carried myself to Ministry of Education. And I told them, I shared an idea with them that they should empower me to go to deaf communities, school for the deaf, and carry out HIV/AIDS sensitization campaign there with sign language. Do you know the first question they asked me? Do you have a certificate in special education? I said no. But I have this knowledge, I can do it. They say, well, you do not have a certificate in special education, so we cannot give you this. I felt bad. I felt very, very bad. Unfortunately, I had nothing to show that I am an expert. And that thing that should have shown that I am an expert is my certificate. They said, do you have certificate in special education? I said, no, sir. And that was the end. It is possible that that idea had not crossed anybody's mind. It is possible. So maybe the day I came to mention it, they'll say, hey, okay, why this boy has brought a good idea. They'll hardly put together people who have certification in that area. And they'll go and do the job. And maybe pay heavy money to them. But I had the skill and knowledge. I didn't have the certification, so I cannot call myself an expert. Does that answer your question, sir?
Very well, sir. Very well. Then my second question,
Thank
sir.
you.
Hello. My
I am
second
with
question.
you.
Yes. Considering the extent to which medical malpractice and negligence has ravaged our communities and Nigeria particularly. And then I'm trying to I'm looking out are looking at situations where you will need to establish these matters before the court, for example. And you may need the services of specialists like experts that will possibly testify to establish what you are claiming. Now, is it possible that how possible is it for you to secure the services of a medical doctor, for example, or a pharmacist who can come and testify as an expert witness
against a fellow, a colleague?
Another colleague, especially for the fact that in the Hippocratic Oath, you said one of their responsibility to protect their teachers and their fellow
No, not that. No, that's not what I said. Maybe you misunderstood me.
I'm just
If I may just come in, please. Sorry, please, the topic for next week is malpractice and all these things. So I don't want us to dive into it fully, considering the fact that next week we are still going to handle this properly. Thank you.
Okay, so the securing experts, that's one aspect. Then is it possible that people who study related courses, you have medicine, you have nurses, you have all these other people who study microbiology and the rest of it, who are conversant, maybe medical things. Can they actually train themselves to become experts that can be called upon to testify?
The only way to do it is to get the relevant certification. If you study microbiology, a lot of people who are studying microbiology, some of them set out to study medicine, but because the school did not give them admission for medicine, they settled for the next best alternative, which is microbiology. Then some of them, because they are passionate to study medicine, they keep writing JAMB, even as microbiology students. Some graduate from microbiology and still go ahead to study medicine. You cannot be a medical doctor if you didn't go through medical school, no matter how much knowledge you have of medicine. Some of the people who are practicing as quack doctors today are some who had gone through medical school but couldn't finish, couldn't graduate. They have the knowledge. They can actually carry out surgery on you. They can actually do some things, but they are not certified. There was a man in Ghana. He was working in the hospital. He's not a doctor. He didn't go to medical school, but he was working in the hospital, serving doctors, not as a nurse. He just grew interest and was becoming handy to these people. They absorbed him gradually, giving him tasks to do. He was not a nurse. He came into hospital as a staff, maybe a cleaner. And he continued that way because he is always in that environment, developed interest, started asking questions. They started giving him tasks, which was wrong. And the man grew his skill and was joining them in theater to do surgery, not as a doctor, not that he was carrying out surgery, but he was observing and observed enough to actually do surgery successfully in Ghana. Until later he was caught, and he said this. Now, our constitution gives you right to defend yourself in court. There is a man in Enugu State, he's not a lawyer. He went to court against INEC some time ago, some years back, defended himself. He didn't get a lawyer, and he won his case. He got judgment for himself. He's not a lawyer. These things are written in English language, provided you can read and understand. But for you to become an expert, recognized, you need to go through the training and certification There's a body. There is a body of knowledge you must acquire, you must have. The trainings, spending 5 years in the university studying law and going to Nigerian law school for 1 year, you cannot read it in books. The assignments I was given in school, you don't know them. The mistake I made in the assignment, my lecturer will correct me. I now know it better. When I came, we talked about beneficence, right? Just here. And I had to make some corrections. If any of you want to talk about beneficence outside, you will talk about it better because you have made a mistake and you were corrected. That is what you get when you go through training. We are having a question and answer session now. Areas you do not understand, you ask questions and you have understanding. When you are reading alone, you don't have anybody to ask questions except the internet now, maybe. But no matter how much you Google, you will still read. This explanation, I am sharing personal experience from my practice. You don't get that personal experience from reading. So it is in the course of undergoing training that those your teachers who are training you, you see a professor of medicine of 30, 40, 50 years. Some of them trained outside Nigeria. So the experience that man has, you don't have it. There are some cases they have handled that they handled only that case in their lifetime of practice. They have not seen that particular kind of case again for 20, 30 years. That experience, you don't have it. So it is until you go through certification, that's when you can be an expert. The only thing you can do is you read up because knowledge is available anywhere. You have the knowledge. That doesn't make you an expert. There is a lawyer in this Abuja. He was a nurse in University of Abuja Teaching Hospital, Gwagwalada. He was a nurse and he developed interest to study law. While he was doing his nursing practice, he was going to school, doing his law training, graduated, became a lawyer. He's now certified. The hospital simply moved him from the nursing department to the legal department. I also know a medical doctor, a trained surgeon. In fact, he's one of our members in Medical Law Practitioners Association of Nigeria, MELPAN. He's a trained medical doctor and he's a trained legal practitioner. Just imagine, he's a lawyer and a surgeon, not just a doctor, he's a surgeon. So imagine the number of years. That's 14 years of unbroken studies. 7 years to be a lawyer. Okay, let me say 6 years to be a lawyer. 5 years plus your law school minus ASU strike. And that man is far older than me. So, you know, ASU strike was worse in years gone by than now. The one we are seeing now is child's play. So he did law, he did medicine first, then came to do law. He's an expert. I know somebody who was a marriage registrar. He studied English in the university, then became a marriage registrar. Then in the course of his job, something happened that required, someone gave him advice, do this, do this, do this, do affidavit, and do this. So he did it. He just went to ask somebody, say, Oga, there is a case on my table. This is say, no, go and do affidavit, go and do this. He did what the man told him and kept a copy of the affidavit in his file in his office and forgot it. 3, 4. Do you know what saved him? He brought it and said there was an affidavit because that's the right procedure. So we did affidavit. This is the affidavit. After that incident, the man went to study law. Today he's a lawyer. He's a trained and certified marriage registrar, and he is a lawyer. So if you are here and you are interested in becoming a medical law expert, don't look at your age. You will not die tomorrow. All you need is sufficient interest and passion. Go and study anything you want to be, not just medical law, anything. You know why? All it will take you is time. If you check your clock, you will see the time ticking. If you do it, time will pass. If you didn't do it, time will pass. The only difference is that if it is 5 years course, at the end of 5 years, you become an expert, you'll be certified. But if you didn't do it, 5 years will pass. At the end of 5 years, you are still where you are. So I want to encourage all of you, beyond medical law, anything in life you want to do, please go ahead and start, because time to run, whether you do anything or you do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments. Thank you for sharing experiences with us. It has been amazing listening to you. I never knew that this aspect was so interesting. It's actually really interesting, and it's good to see things that are happening in that place. Some of us don't know, but it's good that we are learning. And I want to encourage all the mentees, please go back, listen to this video again on YouTube. There might be some things that were said that you thought you heard and you did not hear properly. So please go back and listen. I want to say a very big thank you to Ebenezer. Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you here, and it's an honor to hear you speak. Thank you to all the mentees and all the group that came together to work and to research and to make your presentations. I think you did very well, and there is still room for improvement. So we hope that by next week, the presentations will be better and that the research will be more in-depth. Thank you, Hussein, for moderating. And for the person that was complaining about the picture time that was already taken, please, you can put your videos on again and take a picture while we're rounding up, so that you have something that has your face in it. We encourage everyone to try to get a screenshot, post on LinkedIn, write what you learned, and tag Mr. Ebenezer, tag him on LinkedIn, tag him on Twitter, tag Facebook, so that he can see that his time spent with you today was actually worth it and that you learned a lot. And don't forget the 30 minutes mentorship session that is available. Try to reach out, try to sign up for it also. And then finally, the 8th week is the week for awareness. And so one of the groups have been assigned that you would have to do something to create awareness in any of the topics that you love for an illiterate or a child to be able to understand. So I would like all the groups to start working towards it, because you are to submit it in the 8th week. So with that, we've come to the end of the session today. I think it was a very beautiful and insightful session. Thank you so much, Ebenezer, for today. It has been amazing listening.
Thank you, Julie. It was my honor and privilege.
Thank you very much,
live contributed tips in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I don't know if there's anything you want to say before we round up for today, or you're fine.
Okay. All I will say is keep it up. Personally to you, what you're doing, keep it up. Then to all the mentees, please take these things seriously. What we just did here, people pay to come, and what I discussed with you now, I had to go and I did that in Lagos with Association of Resident Doctors last December. And do you understand? People pay for this as training. But then here you are getting it free. Please do not trivialize it. If you are given an assignment, If your group is given assignments, participate. The learning is in the doing. Prefer to do the research than do the presentation. The person that presents is reading out that thing. Meet that person 2 weeks later. He may remember some, he may forget some. But the person that did the research work, when you are doing your research work in the course of doing your presentation, it is not every information you got in your research work that you present. So the presenter reads what you presented. You that did the research, the information that was not part of the PowerPoint presentation. So take these things seriously. That's all, and I'm very proud of you all. And if any of you would want to volunteer for us, if you are in Abuja and you want to volunteer, even if you are not in Abuja and you want to volunteer for our organization, we can talk about it. We are into patients' rights, advocacy, and sensitization awareness. That's what we do for now. Sensitize, because when you talk about litigation, people have to know their rights first. A lot of people don't know, whether they are lawyers or doctors. I posted something on Facebook some time ago. My classmate called me. She said, Ebenezer, this thing you posted, is it true? She's a lawyer. She said, this thing you posted, is it true? I said, yes. She said that her husband's family doctor of over 20 years has been doing something contrary to what I posted. She's a lawyer, but she didn't know. So if you are interested in volunteering with us, we will be glad to have you on board, whether directly or remotely. In fact, if you are remotely for us, so that you start something where you are on sensitization. Thank you very much. I hope to meet you some other time. Are these same people in the subsequent
yes,
topics we are going to treat?
Program.
Okay.
Yes, this is a 9 weeks program, so they are still around.
Awesome.
Around.
Awesome. So I hope to meet you guys some other time. Take care.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.